Hi, I'm Bonnie Barker with BonnieBayCrochet.com, and I want to show you how to make the Yule Tree Pillow. Okay, let me show you some of the things you're going to need. You're going to need at least 2 skeins of the Red Heart yarn that's listed, and you're going to need 1 pillow form that's 12 inches by 16 inches, and you're going to need some buttons. You're going to need at least 2 buttons that are similar or the same. These are approximately 1.5 inches wide, or you can even use something even 2 inches wide. So whatever you'd like to do. Now these are going to be on the back side of the pillow, so they don't have to be too fancy. Okay, and one more thing, let me show you. If you're using the white pillow form, you also might want to get some fabric that's the same color as the yarn, so as to keep the white from showing through on your pillow.
Before we begin, I highly recommend that you download this pattern. It is a free pattern available from redheart.com. You can simply put in Yule Tree Throw and Pillow in the redheart.com search bar, or you could just click the link that's listed in the description of the video below, and that'll take you right to where you can download this. Okay, you're also going to need crochet hooks size J or 10, which is a 6mm crochet hook, and you will also need a size I or 9, which is a 5.5mm crochet hook. I highly recommend that you have a yarn needle handy to hide loose ends and a pair of scissors. You will also need 2 skeins of the Red Heart Super Saver. This is a worsted or an Aran weight yarn, and each of these skeins has 364 yards. I promise we will not need all of them. It would probably be more like 1.5 skeins total. And the yarn that I'm using is, the color is Patty Green, just like the Afghan videos that I just completed. And let's see, there are the stats on that yarn, should you need that information. This is 100% acrylic. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, using the larger size J or 10 crochet hook, we are going to begin with a slip knot. And then we're going to chain 56 chains. Okay, once we get our 56 chains, we're going to work a double crochet in the 3rd chain. 1, 2, 3, the 3rd chain from the hook, and in each chain across. I like to work in the side of the chain. It just works better for me, easier, faster, and really it should be fine for what we're going to do. If you like working the other type of chains, the single crochet chains, you can do that, but honestly, I don't think it's going to be necessary for this project because I believe the regular old chain works just fine. We're also going to be joining this to other pieces, so I would just encourage you to use just a regular chain for this project. Okay, so go ahead and finish those double crochets in each stitch across. Okay, you should have a total of 54 double crochets plus the turning chain, which does count as a stitch in the stitch count. So the stitch count will say 55 stitches. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and do row number 2. We're going to chain 2, and this chain 2 does count as a stitch in the stitch count with this pattern. Okay, in the next stitch, we're going to work a front post double crochet, and then in the next stitch we're going to work a back post double crochet. If you've never worked these post stitches before, they are actually quite easy. Don't be intimidated by these. These are actually easier than working regular crochet. We do not work in through the top loops, but instead we work around the stitch by putting the hook around the stitch like you would a belt, and then you pull up the stitch, or up the strand rather. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, just like you would to complete a regular double crochet for a front post. And for the back post, we come around the back door, come from the back, go around and go out the back side door, giving it kind of like a belt but tying it in the back, and then complete the stitch. So go ahead and alternate that all the way across front post double crochet, and then back post double crochet. Front post double crochet, and then back post double crochet. So go ahead and alternate that all the way across the row. this row will end with a front post double crochet and then a half double crochet worked right into that turning chain, just like that. Okay, now we're going to turn and work row number 3. We're going to chain 2. We're going to start with a back post double crochet and then a front post double crochet. You want to be sure that you work the back post over the stitches that look like back post and the front post over the stitches that look like front post. Just go ahead and alternate that all the way across. Let me show you. So you're actually forming these ribbing lines. Okay, so go ahead and finish that row all the way across. At the end of round 3, it ends with a back post double crochet, and then we work a half double crochet in that turning chain. This is what you should have at the end of row 3. Okay, let's go on to row number 4, which is a repeat of row 2. We're going to chain 2, and we're going to work a front post double crochet and then a back post double crochet. We're just maintaining the ribbing like we've been doing the last 2 rows. So go ahead and work that all the way across. Now we begin row 5, and this is where we're going to begin to make the tree portion. Okay, we are also going to be starting to use treble crochet, so you need to pay attention whether we're using a double or a treble crochet. So we're going to chain 3 for this row. We're going to start with a back post treble around the next stitch, and then we're going to do a front post treble around the next stitch. We're going to do this 4 times. So we've already completed 1 set. This is 2. And this is our 3rd repeat. And now our 4th repeat. Oops. Okay, so let's stop and take a look at that. So we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stitches there. This is going to be the border stitches that are going to help frame our Christmas tree. Okay, so after we do that, we are going to work what they call a 2 over 2 back cross and then a 2 over 2 front cross. I'm going to try to explain that a little bit here. What we're going to do is we're going to skip the next 2 stitches. We're going to work a front post treble crochet in the next 2 stitches. Okay, now we are going to be working the honeycomb stitch. So we're going to work the next 2 stitches worked behind these stitches in these 2 stitches that we skipped, and we're going to do that by coming in the hole or coming in back behind, and we're going to work it over this stitch. It's easy if you just put your thumb up through the hole. It's easier to grab onto the stitches this way, and then do the next stitch as well. The tall man and your thumb your thumb is going to really help you to feel where these stitches are. So use the nerve endings in these fingers to help guide you for these stitches. The next 2 or 4 stitches are going to be easier. Skip the next 2 stitches. We're going to front post treble in the next 2 stitches. And then working in front of these 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble in the 2 stitches that we just skipped. This is much easier to do than working behind those. Okay, so why did we do this? Well, we are forming the honeycomb, the first row, and it should look like a big V like this after you complete that section. Okay, after we complete those last 4 stitches, we're going to go ahead and change to the smaller hook size. And you need to have a couple stitch markers on hand. If you don't own stitch markers, you can just use a piece of contrasting yarn for what I'm going to show you next. We're going to work through the top loops like you normally would. We're going to work a double crochet in that next stitch, and I'm going to have you put a stitch marker here in this stitch, and let's see if I can get it in. And this is simply there to remind you to change the hook size back and forth, because we're going to be using the smaller size hook for the tree portion, but the larger hook for everything else that surrounds that. So we're going to go ahead and work 21 double crochets. That was one. Again, working through the top loops. 2. After completing those 21 double crochets, go ahead and put a stitch marker in that last double crochet, and that's going to remind you to change your hook size back to the larger hook. Okay, now we are going to work another one of these stitches here on the other side. Everything that we're going to do here is going to be symmetrical to what we've just completed. So we're going to skip the next 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2 stitches, working behind those 2 stitches. We're going to front post treble. Remember, being very careful to use your thumb there to help you find that stitch. You can always look back here to make sure that you did get the correct stitches. After that, we're going to skip the next 2 and then front post treble in the next 2 stitches. Working in front of those last 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble in the 2 skipped stitches. Now we're going to begin the ribbing of this section. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to work a front post treble crochet around the next stitch, and then a back post treble around the next stitch. Front post. We're going to repeat that 4 times, a total of 8 stitches. Six, and this is stitch number 7 and 8, and we're going to work a double crochet in that turning chain. Okay, we're working a double crochet because it matches the height when using the front post trebles. Okay, so this is what you should have after row number 5. Okay, let's go on to row number 6. We're going to chain 2, 1, 2. Now we're going to start using back and front post double crochet. We're going to front post double crochet and back post double crochet. We're going to do that 4 times on the total of 8 stitches. So after completing those 8 front and back post stitches, now we're going to work 8 back post double crochets over that cable foundation from the previous row. So just work these straight across all the way to the stitch marker. Okay, now we get to the stitch marker, and that's a sign to change to the smaller size hook. That's the only reason it's there. And yes, it is very helpful. So go ahead and work that first double crochet, and do take the time to put that stitch marker back in place. And then work those 21 double crochets, working through the top loops until you get to the next stitch marker. After working that last stitch where the stitch marker was, I'm going to go ahead and just move it up. And that's a reminder to change back to the larger hook size. And then we're going to work 8 back post double crochets across the cable portion. After working those 8 double crochets, then we are going to work the back post double crochet, front post double crochet, and go ahead and alternate that all the way over those 8 stitches. I'll just go ahead and finish these out with you. And then after, whoops, let's do that one again. After that, we're going to work a half double crochet in that turning chain, just like so. And now we are ready to start our Christmas tree in this row. So now we're going to be row 7. I'm going to chain 3 and we're back to working front post and back post treble crochets. Whenever the front side is facing, and this is the front side where you see the cabling, you're going to be working treble crochets for a lot of the stitches across. Now, not for this portion, but just, for the cabling and the ribbing. When you have the back side facing you, and you'll see the cables looking like this, they don't look like cables at all, you're going to be using front and back post double crochet. Okay, just wanted to kind of make that kind of clear. There is a pattern to what we're doing here. Okay, so now we're going to start row 7 with the back post treble crochet and then a front post treble crochet. Go ahead and do those over the first 8 stitches. Now we come to the cabling portion. We're going to skip the next 2 stitches. We're going to front post treble in the next 2 stitches. After working those front post treble crochets, we're going to work behind those stitches and work 2 more front post treble crochets, working in the stitches that we skipped. Now, I think I had called this cable earlier a honeycomb. It's actually going to be the wheat cable, so I apologize for that. Go ahead and skip these 2 stitches. Front post treble in the next 2 stitches. Working in front of those 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble in the 2 stitches that we skipped. So as we do these cable rows with the front side facing, we're going to do them the same each time, and the cables are going to be each going out, kind of like a wheat stalk. That's where the name comes from. Okay, so now we come to our first stitch marker, and that tells us we need to change our hook to the smaller hook size. Go ahead and work that first double crochet and switch out the stitch marker. Put it back in just to remind you. It does help me immensely. Now we're going to work 9 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Stop and look at that. So we have 9 double crochets. Now the next 3, we're going to work 3 front post double crochets. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and this is beginning, the bottom of the tree, the stump of the tree. Okay, now after that, we're going to go back to working through the top loops of the next 9 stitches. So go ahead and work the 9 double crochets, and that should take you to the second stitch marker. After crocheting those 9 double crochets, I've gone ahead and moved my stitch marker, changing my hook out, and so now I'm going to work the wheat cable by skipping 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2 stitches, working behind those 2 stitches. I'm going to work front post treble in those 2 skipped stitches. Again, just use that thumb to help you, find where that stitch is. And then after we do those 2, we skip the next 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2 stitches. Working in front of these 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble crochet in the 2 stitches that we just skipped. Okay, and then after that, we are going to work our 8 ribbing stitches, and we're using front and back post treble crochet. Remember, the front side is facing, so we're going to use front and back post treble crochet. So go ahead and work those to the end and end with a double crochet in that turning chain. Now we're going to begin row 8. We start with a chain 2, and then we're back to working front and back post double crochets. So go ahead and work those alternating front and back post double crochets over the first 8 stitches. Now we're going to work back post double crochet over the next 8 stitches, which is the part where the cable is, that wheat cable. that brings us to that first stitch marker, which reminds us to switch our hooks out. And we are going to work 9 double crochets. After we work that first one, go ahead and let's replace the stitch marker. I know I'm droning on and on about this, but trust me, I've done this so many times and have just, barreled right through the stitch marker, or maybe didn't have a stitch marker and just forgot to change my hook. I oftentimes think, oh, I'll remember to change it, and I don't. And it's really important that you change the hook size. If you don't do that, what'll happen is the part where the tree will look really, kind of puffy, and it'll just look oversized for the area. So that's the main reason why I'm having you change this, so that everything looks nice and even and tidy. Okay, so after you do those 9 double crochets, now we're going to work those 3 back post double crochets. And again, we're forming that stump of the tree. So after those 3 back post double crochets, then we go back to working in the top loops for the next 9 stitches. So work 9 double crochets, and that should take you to the second stitch marker. After working that last double crochet, I've moved my stitch marker. I'm going to change my hook size back to the larger J size, and we're going to work back post double crochets in the next 8 stitches. After those 8 back post double crochets, we're going to work the ribbing. So start with a back post double crochet, front post double crochet. So go ahead and alter those back and forth over the next 8 stitches, and then when you get to the turning chain, we're going to end with a half double crochet. Now we've come to row 9. We're going to chain 3. We're going to start with a back post treble crochet, and then we're going to work a front post treble crochet. Just alternate that over the first 8 stitches. After those 8 stitches of the ribbing, we're going to skip the next 2 stitches. We're going to work this cable, front post treble in those 2 stitches. Now working behind those 2 stitches, we're going to work front post trebles in those 2 stitches skipped. Okay, and we're going to skip the next 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2 stitches, and then working in front of these 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble in the 2 stitches that were just skipped. Okay, we see that stitch marker. We know that's to change to the smaller size hook. And so let me just give you a view of what we have here. And what we're going to do is we're going to put our double crochet in that first stitch. We're actually going to double crochet in the first 4 stitches, but let me go ahead and place my little reminder marker here. And we're going to double crochet in the next 3 more, so we have a total of 4. Okay, so we have a total of 4 double crochets. Now we're going to do something very different. We're going to start forming the tree limbs, and we're going to start with a slip stitch, only working in the front loop. And then we're going to chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we're going to slip stitch in the next stitch, only working in that front loop. Okay, now we're going to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to slip stitch in the next, using only the front loop. Okay, so we've made a chain 7 and a chain 5. Okay, now we're going to do that 6 times, okay, over the next several stitches. So we've done 1 repeat. We're going to repeat that 5 more times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then slip stitch, working in the front loop only. And then chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then slip stitch. So go ahead and do that a total of 6 times, or 4 more times after you finish these 2. So after doing 6 sets of these, let's just verify. So we have a chain 7, a chain 5, that's 1 set, chain 7, chain 5, that's 2, that's 3, that's 4, That's 5 and 6. Okay, now we're ready to work 4 double crochets, just 1 double crochet in each of the next 4 stitches. And that 4th stitch should have that stitch marker, which we're going to promptly take out and move. I know this takes a lot of time, but trust me, it's time well spent, and it prevents ripping out later. Let's go ahead and switch our hook back to the larger size, and we're going to work the cable again. Okay, we're going to skip 2. Now this is going to be the last time I work the cable, because it'll make the video a lot more, shorter for one thing. And if you've already gotten the understanding down of what you're doing on both of these ends, you really don't need to see that, 20 more times. So let's go ahead, and then we work behind these 2 stitches. So I just want to let you know I'm going to focus mainly on the tree portion for the next several rows after this and the next row. Okay, so skip these next 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2. Working in front of those 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble in those 2 skipped stitches. And then now we get to the front post and back post treble crochets for the ribbing. That's important that you remember that we're working front post and back post treble with the front side facing, and we're working front and back post double crochets when the back side is facing. So the larger stitches with the front side facing, the smaller stitches with the back side facing. So go ahead and finish this out, and we're going to end this with a double crochet in that turning chain. So we start row number 10 with a chain 2, and we work our front post, back post double crochets for the ribbing. So go ahead and do the ribbing, and then follow that up with 8 back post double crochets across the cable portion. After working over the cabling section, let's go ahead and change our hook size and put a double crochet in that first stitch. Move our stitch marker, and double crochet in those first 4 stitches. I've already done the first. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now we're going to be working in the remaining loop down below here. We're going to work a treble crochet working in just that remaining loop. And if you need to figure out where is that first loop, we'll find that first slip stitch, and it should be right opposite that. So it's right there, and we're going to work treble crochets in each of those remaining loops. This is back behind the tree, and do make sure that these the branches are away from you, okay, as you work these stitches. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and work these all the way across, just so you can see what this looks like. I know it can be a little tricky when you are working in just the single loops, and there are a lot of loops there. You need to make sure you pick the right one that's actually a part of the stitch. That will actually, they're all a part of stitches, but the one that was the remaining loop. So there should be 12. Let me see, I think actually 13. Yeah, there should be 13 of these treble crochets, and let's go ahead and count them, because the total number of stitches in this section is 21. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That looks good. And then we have 4 more double crochets to finish out before we change our hook size back up again. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to go ahead and move that stitch marker. I'm going to also change my hook size, and I'm just going to go ahead and give you some verbal directions here. So go ahead and do those 8 back post double crochets across here, and then alternate, starting with the back post double crochet, alternate over those 8 stitches for the ribbing, and then ending with a half double crochet in that turning chain. Now for the remainder of the rows with the tree portion, I am going to actually skip over this section and just assume that you understand how these are formed. They are going to be the same until we get to the final ribbing that goes across the entire top. So as we're forming the tree, the beginning and ends of the rows, okay, this would be the beginning, and the end of the rows are going to be worked the same way that we've been working the last 5 or 6 rows, okay, or so. So I'm going to go ahead and just say go ahead and finish the ribbing. We're using front and back post treble crochet, and then complete the wheat cabling, and then I'm going to just focus on the tree portion, which is the only part that varies from row to row. For the tree section, I've gone ahead and changed my crochet hook, and I'm going to go ahead and change the stitch marker, and we're going to crochet in the next, or actually in 5 stitches. I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now we're going to slip stitch in the front loop only of the next stitch. And we're going to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to slip stitch in the next stitch in the front loop only. And then we're going to chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And slip stitch in the next stitch. Okay, so we're going to do this chain 5 and then chain 7. We're going to have a total of 5 repeats for this. Okay, so go ahead. I'll do the next one. It's chaining 5, slip stitch in that next stitch, and then chain 7, and then slip stitch in that next stitch. Let's take a look at what we have now. So I've actually repeated this 1, 2 times. So we want a total of 5 repeats, so I need to repeat this 3 more times. Okay, so now that I have the 5 repeats, let's just look at them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we work a double crochet in each of the next 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That last should be worked in the stitch with the stitch marker, so that tells us to go ahead and change to the larger size hook and go ahead and finish the ribbing and the cabling portion, and you're going to end with a double crochet in the turning chain, which is right here. Now working row 12, I've gone ahead and worked the ribbing, and I've worked those back post double crochets. I'm going to change the hook size now, and the directions say to work a double crochet, and the next 5 stitches I'm going to go ahead and change my stitch marker, and we're going to do those 5 double crochets working through the top loops. Let's make sure I have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now we're going to be working the treble crochets just like we did 2 rows down. And remember, find that first loop, that remaining loop that we're going to work on by finding where that first slip stitch was. And go ahead and work the treble crochets in the remaining loop. These should be easier to find because you can see the treble crochets, and that's what you're actually working in, the treble crochets from 2 rows down. So go ahead and work those. You should have 11 of these treble crochets. After working those 11 treble crochets, we go back to the double crochets, and you should have 5 of those. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. This brings us to the stitch marker, which tells us to change our hook size, and I'm going to go ahead and remove the stitch marker, and then we're going to work 8 back post double crochets, and then work the back post double, front post double, alternating over the ribbing and with a half double crochet in that turning chain. Now we start row 13. I've completed the ribbing, I've completed the wheat cable. Go ahead and change our hook size, and we are going to crochet double crochets, let's see, in the next 6 stitches. So go ahead and do that. Make sure you remove your stitch marker, keep those things going so that we don't forget to change our hooks out, and go ahead and do those 6 double crochets. After completing those 6 double crochets, we're going to start with more tree limbs by using a slip stitch, working in the front loop only. We're going to chain 7 and then slip stitch in the next front loop of the next stitch, and then chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and slip stitch in the next stitch. And we're going to do that 4 times total. So that I've already completed the first, so do that 3 more times. So after doing that 4 times, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 repeats, and then now we double crochet in the next 6 stitches. So go ahead and complete those 6 stitches, and then once you complete those 6 stitches, go ahead and move your stitch marker, finish the cable and the ribbing across, and you're going to end with a double crochet in this turning chain, and don't forget that you're working front post trebles for the ribbing. Okay, now we've come to row 14. I've done the ribbing and we've done the 8 stitches of the back post double crochet across that cable. I'm going to change my crochet hook out. I'm going to go ahead and remove the stitch marker, and I'll put that in just a minute. And we're going to double crochet in those 6 double crochets, working through the top loops. That's 5 and 6. Let me just make sure I have 6. Yes, I do. Now we're going to work in the remaining loop, and we're going to work treble crochets in these remaining loops. Okay, so let's go ahead and work those. So after working those treble crochets in those remaining loops, you should have 9 of those. And then afterwards, we're going to work going back to the double crochets, working through both loops of those remaining 6 double crochets. Okay, I'm going to work those all the way to the stitch marker, and then I'm going to switch out my hook and then work the back post double crochets across those 8 stitches of the cable, and then the 8 stitches using back post and front post double crochets, ending the row with a half double crochet in the turning chain. Okay, now we get to row number 15. I've already gone and done the ribbing and the cable. I've changed my hook size, and we're going to work 7 double crochets. Going to go ahead and move my stitch marker. So we're going to double crochet in the next 7 stitches. After those 7 double crochets, we're going to start another row of tree limbs, and we're going to start with a slip stitch in the next stitch, just working in the front loop, and then chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Slip stitch in the next stitch, and then we're going to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Slip stitch in the next stitch, and we go 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then slip stitch in the next stitch, front loop only, and do 5 stitches or chains. Slip stitch in the next, and then 7, and slip stitch in the next stitch, and then 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then slip stitch in the next stitch. And let's double check to make sure we have 3 repeats. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now we are going to double crochet in the next 7 stitches, and that should take us to our stitch marker. Let's see if it does. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So that does take us to our stitch marker. Let's just stop and take a look at where the tree should be at this stage. Okay, I promise you it's going to look a little bit better when we work those other rows and these tree limbs kind of fall into place. So now we just need to finish out. We need to switch. I'll go ahead and show you to do that. Switch to our larger crochet hook. Finish the cabling and the ribbing. Remember, we're working front post trebles with the front side facing, and we're going to end with a double crochet in the turning chain. So go ahead and do that and do the other side, and we'll start on the next row at the tree portion. Now we're on row 16. I've gone ahead and worked the ribbing and the back post double crochets for the over the cable section, and I've changed my crochet hook, and we're going to double crochet. Let's go ahead and remove the stitch marker and put it back where it needs to go, and we're going to do 7 double crochets. After those 7 double crochets, we're going to be working trebles in the remaining loop, and remember, find where that slip stitch was worked, and that's what you want to work opposite of there. So we'll go ahead and work these 7 treble crochets worked in that remaining loop. I'm just going to go ahead and work all of these for you. Let's see, is that all of them? I think we have one more right here. Let's go ahead and do a little count just to make sure that we have them all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That looks good. Now we're ready to work the 7 double crochets worked in both loops. Okay, so let's go ahead and work those. And this should take us all the way to our stitch marker. And it does. Let's just verify that we have 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to go ahead and move my stitch marker and change out my hook to the larger hook. And then I'm going to finish this row again. 8 back post double crochets. The ribbing, starting with the back post double crochet, then front post double crochet, and then end with a half double crochet in the turning chain. Now we're about to start row 17. I'm going to go ahead and take out my stitch marker, change my hook to the smaller hook, and we're going to double crochet in the first or the next 8 double crochets. After those 8 double crochets, we're going to slip stitch in the next stitch, using only the front loop. We're going to chain 7. And then we're going to slip stitch in the next stitch, only into front loop. And we're going to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to slip stitch in the next stitch. And we're just going to do that one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then slip stitch into front loop only of that next stitch. And then chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And slip stitch front loop of the next stitch, and then we're going to double crochet in the next 8 stitches. That brings us to our stitch marker, where we know to change out the hook sizes, and then we will complete our wheat cable and the ribbing again using front post treble and ending with a double crochet in the turning chain. As we work row 18, I've gone ahead and changed my hook size, and we're going to double crochet in the next 8 double crochets. After working those 8 double crochets, now we work in the remaining loop of those treble crochets. Remember, find where that slip stitch was, and that's where we want to start the treble crochets. I'll go ahead and work these all with you. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So all 5 of those. Now we go back to working double crochets in the next 8 stitches, and we're going to work them all the way to the stitch marker. I've gone ahead and worked those 8 double crochets. I put my stitch marker back in so I can switch my hook over. Now I just need to finish the 8 back post double crochets and the ribbing using back post and front post double crochets, ending the row with a half double crochet in the turning chain. Now we come to row 19. I've gone ahead and worked the ribbing and the cable, and I'm going to change my hook size, take out the stitch marker, and for this row we are actually going to work 9 double crochets. So go ahead and work 9 double crochets working through both loops. After working those 9 double crochets, we're going to slip stitch in the next stitch, and then we are going to chain 5 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Slip stitch in that next front loop, and then we're going to chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we're going to slip stitch in that next stitch, and then we're going to work double crochets in the next 9 stitches. Go ahead and work them all the way to the stitch marker. Don't forget to change out your hook at that point, and then complete the cable and the ribbing. For row 20, after working those stitches over the ribbing and over the cable with the back post double crochets, we're going to work double crochets with our new smaller hook. Don't forget to change that out. Just 1 or 2 more rows of this, and we're going to double crochet in the 9 double crochets. That brings us to the treble crochets that are going to be worked in that remaining loop, and there are only going to be 3 of them. 1, 2, and 3. Let's go ahead and get all the loops through, and then we're going to work back in those double crochets up top. Go ahead and work 9 double crochets. This should take you to the second stitch marker, and then after that go ahead and complete the cable and the ribbing. Now for row 21, I've gone ahead and removed my stitch marker, and we are going to double crochet in 10 double crochets. After crocheting those 10 double crochets, we are going to slip stitch the next stitch. I'm going to chain 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we're going to slip stitch in that very same stitch for a second time. Okay, that's going to be the apex of our tree. And then after that, we're going to double crochet in the next 10 stitches, which will take you all the way to the stitch marker. And then after that, go ahead and finish the cable and the ribbing after you've changed to the larger size hook. And we're going to end this with a double crochet worked in the turning chain. For row 22, after working the ribbing and the cable, change out that hook. Let's go ahead and remove our stitch marker, and we are going to crochet double crochets working through both loops in the next 10 stitches. After working those 10 double crochets, we just have 1 treble crochet in the 1 loop, which is right here opposite those 2 slip stitches for the apex of the tree, and then work double crochets in the next 10 stitches. After we finish working these 10 stitches, you'll switch your crochet hook size and then continue by working the 8 back post double crochets behind the cable and the ribbing. Now for rows 23 and 24, the directions say to repeat rows 5 and 6, and we will be dropping the stitch markers very soon. So I've gone ahead and started the repeat. This will be row 23, which is a repeat of row 5. Just go ahead and work the cabling and the ribbing as you have been doing. Go ahead and replace your crochet hook to the smaller hook, and we're simply going to work 21 double crochets across the section now that we've completed the tree. Okay, so let's go ahead and work those 21 double crochets, and then after that go ahead and switch crochet hooks to the larger size, and then complete the cabling and the ribbing, ending with a double crochet in the turning chain. Now as we begin row 24, this with the back side facing, and we've completed our ribbing and the back post double crochets, we're going to go ahead and remove the stitch markers once and for all. This is the last time we have to switch the hook size, and we're going to work a double crochet in each of these 21 stitches across. After that last stitch, I've gone ahead and removed the stitch marker, and I'm going to just finish this whole project out with this larger hook from this point on. So we'll go ahead and finish out the 8 back post double crochets over that cable and the ribbing, ending with a half double crochet in the turning chain. Okay, let's take a look at our tree. This is what you should have, of course, with the ribbing on both sides. It's hard to get it all in the view at the same time. So now we're going to begin finishing off just like we started with the ribbing, going back and forth. Okay, so work at the next 4 rows are going to be just that, and go ahead and follow the lead of what you're already working on. So we're going to chain 2, and we're going to only use back post and front post double crochets for that. So if you have a back post double crochet, work a back post. If you have a front post, work a front post over those ribbing stitches. When you get to the cabling portion, just continue to alternate. Okay, we had a front post double crochet, so go ahead with a back post double crochet and then a front post double crochet, just alternating it as you go, and do the same over the double crochets across this section as well. Okay, I've worked the ribbing, alternating front post and back post double crochets all the way across the area that's above the Christmas tree, and now I'm joining in with the ribbing, and it does work out. If you've worked these stitches correctly, you shouldn't have to, change the alteration. It should go front post and back post double crochet. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to end this row right over here with a half double crochet. After you do that, you need to work the same alternating front post and back post double crochet for 3 more rows. At the end of row number 28, which was the 4th row of the ribbing repeat, go ahead and just give it a chain, pull it tight, and get your scissors and cut a generous thread, nice and long thread, so that you can hide that later on. And let's see what we have. Okay, so this is the front of the pillow, and you can see the tree right there. Okay, now we need to work on the back portions of the pillow.